Hello and welcome to the sportsbet.io Champions League podcast. This is our Tuesday version, and for Matchday 4, don't forget we have also got our Wednesday version as well. Do take a look at the Clubhouse TV YouTube channel and you'll find it all there. My name is Pete Farries. We're joined, as always, by our fantastic football expert, Mr. Robert Daly. Hello.
Hello, Pete.
Before we get into the meat of the game-by-game action, I just want to have a quick chat about the league itself. No surprise to see a Unai Emery side doing well in Europe, but who've kind of underperformed for you so far? I mean, the likes for me of PSG and Atletico Madrid have sort of struggled in this new format.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to all these clubs, of course, on the show over the course of the coming shows, but I think PSG look short in the Champions League. I'm sure they'll at least make the playoffs. The case can be said for Atletico as well, but Bayern also stand out for me after a couple of defeats and notable defeats. They're doing well in the Bundesliga, but it's a surprise somewhat to see these teams that normally after, say, 3 match days of the old format would be top of their group, thinking, well, one more win and we're through and we can rotate and all the rest of it. It's kind of mixed things up a little bit. So credit to a team like Aston Villa for picking up 3 victories in their opening 3 games.
I love the idea of scoring 9 goals in your opening Champions League game and then a couple of games later you're underperforming. It's weird.
Yeah, and look, I think it's a company's having to learn and adapt to this level of coaching. He hasn't had this yet. They really got done by Barcelona. So we'll see if they can recalibrate and get themselves back challenging for those automatic, the top 8 promotion places that just gets you straight into the round of 16 without a playoff.
Speaking of Barcelona, they also absolutely battered Real Madrid, who host AC Milan on Tuesday. I don't know what to do with Real Madrid at the moment, Rob. All kinds of rumours and suggestions of more unrest behind the scenes. Whether or not that's true, you never quite know with Real Madrid, do you? But AC Milan, as much as they've had a few problems, they at least feel quite solid. So with this being the first game back for Real Madrid, obviously their game against Valencia was postponed due to the tragedy in Valencia. But I felt that AC Milan, actually at quite a big price, were a team that could be supported to win this game.
Well, on Milan, the one thing I'd say to caveat that is I have not been that impressed with them in the Champions League. So 7th in Serie A, they won at the weekend, a slightly contagious refereeing decision in their win at Monza, a 1-0 victory. They needed the win against Club Brugge on Matchday 3 because they'd lost to Leverkusen. And I was really underwhelmed by them on Matchday 1 against Liverpool. They took the lead. Christian Pulisic scored, but it was, to me, Liverpool are obviously an excellent side right now. They're top of the Premier League. I'm going to talk about them shortly, but it was a reminder to me, Pete, in a way, of that big gulfing gap. And the reason I highlight this is I think that will be exposed against Real Madrid. I think that's what will happen at the Bernabeu, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just laughing because I think did you accidentally say a contagious refereeing decision there rather than contentious?
Did I say contagious?
I think you said contagious refereeing.
Leave that in. Leave that in.
We're going to go from dog last week to suggesting the referee is highly contagious this week. I was listening to every word, and folks, you should be listening to every word from Rob. He knows exactly what he's talking about, but I couldn't get the word contagious referee out of my brain, and it was whirring round and round and round.
Oh dear.
With Real Madrid, though, it just feels very strange. It doesn't feel settled. I mean, even outside of that sort of heavy defeat to Barcelona, who are just flying all over the place at the moment, it doesn't feel clicked in at Real Madrid to me this season so far.
No, that's completely fair, and I think the recalibration of their attack with Kylian Mbappe being in there has been a major factor. Has it disrupted so much of the harmony players spoke about at the back end of last season being the reason that they went on to win the title and win the Champions League? So, and there's been, there were a couple of reasons I think for their behaviour around the Ballon d'Or. The fact that Vinicius Junior did win it, but it felt in part as well a deflection tactic to move narrative away from the fact that they just got thumped at home by their nearest rivals, a couple of days before at the hands of Barcelona. So there's a lot going on at Real Madrid, it feels like, at the moment. Obviously, as you mentioned, they didn't play at the weekend, so their players in theory should be relatively fresh. But they've also had a bumpy kind of Champions League so far. They had to score a couple of goals late to beat Stuttgart Matchday 1, lost at Lille on Matchday 2, a massive result for the French team. And then they were 2-0 down, of course, to Dortmund with an hour to play before they suddenly did the Real Madrid thing and turned it on. Vinicius Junior hat-trick, boom, 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 win the game. Yeah. But yeah, they don't feel in the best of places right now. But I feel all of those reasons, their apparent injustice feeling around the Ballon d'Or, they're looking for a reaction after the Barcelona game, the fact they should be relatively fresh, makes me think that Milan might be in for a bit of trouble on Tuesday night.
We'll see. There should be plenty of goals. That Ballon d'Or stuff, whether it's a deflection or otherwise, did make me feel like it made them feel even weaker to me. It made them feel frailer and a bit more panicky than perhaps you'd like to be portraying publicly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I wonder if internally it looks like a show of strength. So to someone like Vinicius Junior and the other Real Madrid players, it's like look at the level to which we'll stand up for one of our players when we feel there's an injustice. At the same time, they won Club of the Year, Ancelotti won Coach of the Year, Vinicius finished second, and Bellingham finished third. So it ultimately it just looked like that Roy Keane clip where he just goes, "You're baby, you're being a baby," that whole thing. It kind of felt like that to everybody outside. What might be the thinking for Florentino Perez, who only cares about Real Madrid, obviously. We know the way he gave his on about the Super League and all this and the interest of his club, is that maybe within the halls of the training ground it galvanizes them. But I agree, it gave off an exterior weakness to them that everyone else kind of half laughed at and half sneered at.
I think I fully laughed and fully sneered, if that's entirely possible. We move on to Sporting against Manchester City, which is a really interesting game for a number of reasons. Obviously, Sporting will be losing their manager come Monday, the 11th of November. Ruben Amorim taking over at Manchester United. As we know, we're not going to discuss Manchester United because, folks, they're not in the Champions League. We are going to discuss, though, their opponents, Manchester City, off the back of a bit of a strange 2-1 loss to Bournemouth at the weekend. Man City are another side who they finally feel properly gettable in the Premier League, as we saw from Bournemouth at the weekend. I think they probably win this game, but I don't know if it's going to be incredibly one-sided.
No, you might have looked at this in previous years and look, they may prove me wrong, Pete. They might go to Lisbon and win 4 or 5-0 and do that Manchester City thing in the Champions League, as they did to Slovan Bratislava, as they did to Sparta Prague. Different calibre of opposition, of course, because of the way that Sporting are going at the moment. But yes, it's undeniable that the injury to Rodri has kind of certainly taken away a layer of protection that means you feel you can get at them a bit more. And what Pep Guardiola was talking about prior to the Spurs game in the week, they lost in the English League Cup on Wednesday to Spurs, their first defeat of the season. With the injuries, Guardiola, that was a Freudian slip because they're both doing this at the moment, talking about their small squads, and struggling to deal with the intensity that other teams are bringing. So Pep Guardiola rotated, and he, not massively, it was kind of 5-6 changes, I think, for Spurs, because he was saying, I'm thinking about Bournemouth. He was extremely explicit. I'm thinking about Bournemouth. I'm thinking about the Premier League. I'm thinking about the Champions League. I'm going to half throw away the Carabao Cup a little bit. Suddenly they go to Bournemouth, and they cannot get up to Bournemouth's intensity. It was the first word that Pep Guardiola brought up in his post-match interviews about that energy that Bournemouth have. They should have won that game by more. And if you've seen Bournemouth playing recently, perhaps it wouldn't have been so much of a surprise necessarily that they played like that.
And in truth, Rob, they weren't brilliant against Southampton either. Another lowly Premier League side. Russell Martin's team have played better than their results. Obviously beat Everton at the weekend, but they weren't brilliant against Southampton either.
No, and I think it's also understandable. There's been this extraordinary level that they've been maintaining. They've had a lot of players go deep into the European Championships in the summer. And their injury list is notable. I mean, I think it was encouraging for Guardiola that on the bench at the weekend he had, Kevin De Bruyne back. Savinho was on the bench despite the fact he came off at Spurs. Akanji, injured in the warm-up at Spurs, started at Bournemouth. So maybe the squad is getting back into a position where it's going to be a bit more competitive. But in this brief window where they've been properly depleted, they've suffered a couple of notable defeats, gone out of one competition and lost top spot in the Premier League. I don't know, maybe. I mean, it'd be some European sign-off for Ruben Amorim in his final European game in charge to defeat Manchester United City rivals in the Champions League.
You'd certainly start very popular at Old Trafford, wouldn't you, if you managed to
Yeah.
if you managed to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, look, Victor Gyökeres is an anytime goal scorer player. If anyone's getting involved in that, the guy is just absolutely unstoppable. He looked like a top 4 Premier League team when he was in the English Championship, and now he's in the Portuguese top division. He looks like an elite player. He looks absolutely unbelievable. We'll move on to Liverpool Leverkusen. Lever are flat. They are struggling to properly find their rhythm, their pace. They've had a couple of injuries. But at the moment, Liverpool are getting the job done. At times at the weekend, they showed little variations of almost Klopp-like intensity against Brighton. But ultimately, Arne Slot's his own man, and he's a man who's doing a very good job. Liverpool are a nice price here, and Leverkusen, they're hard to back at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, no shame necessarily in drawing with Stuttgart, a fellow Champions League team at the weekend in the Bundesliga on Friday night. But again, how on earth do you go again at that level if you're Bayer Leverkusen? And if we remember as well, the way they navigated themselves to the Europa League final last year was with smart rotation on those Thursday nights in that competition. The Champions League doesn't afford you that. You have to go strong, and they've been rewarded. 7 points. They beat Feyenoord 4-0 away. Wirtz and Boniface starring. Beat Milan at home. Brest are actually a pretty impressive European side so far. 1-1 draw away from home. But I just don't know how you maintain that level. I also think, Pete, that Xabi Alonso would have liked to have faced Klopp's Liverpool of last season much more than this Arne Slot incarnation. And what is apparent, and you're absolutely spot on to bring up the Klopp kind of intensity, and when Anfield gets on top of you, as it did to Fabian Hürzeler's Brighton, he spoke about it after the game, his first experience of it, and all the rest of it. But that Liverpool now is a team with more control. They lose possession of the ball. It's something like, these are rough numbers, 120 times a game. Under Klopp, it was 150. And I think that would have suited Leverkusen more to have a Liverpool team that didn't have as much control as they do now. They've changed their dynamic a little bit, and they're looking very good. Look, they were really poor first half against Brighton, but sorted it out. And Mo Salah, having been admittedly largely quiet on the day, I covered the game. He didn't do lots, and then he does everything by scoring the winning goal. So, and Liverpool's squad's not in too bad shape. They've lost Diogo Jota, of course. Darwin Núñez has been playing up front. Chiesa's not fit. Elliott's not back, and they're still without Alisson.
Yeah.
Queeving Keller has been unbelievable, but brilliant one-on-one save to keep it 1-0 at the weekend. So I'm feeling like Liverpool are in a good spot going into this one, Pete.
Yeah, agreed. And for me, Dominic Szoboszlai has been one of the best players this season across the Premier League. Whenever I've seen him, and I've seen him in Europe as well, where he's just unbelievable. Szoboszlai. I mean, I think he's great. I think he's got everything. I think he'll tackle. I think his positioning's great. I think his passing is brilliant. His vision's great. I mean, I could just keep going here, but he is brilliant, and we haven't got time for me to list every attribute. You've listed every single attribute. The one thing I think he does need to improve. And Slot has pointed to this. He obviously loves Dominic Szoboszlai. He's been playing in that number 10 position that Liverpool haven't really had for a while. Is that Szoboszlai doesn't score enough goals. And I think this is a completely fair analysis from Slot. You look at the way Szoboszlai missed a chance against Brighton in the League Cup last week. He's not... You want him to have chipped in with 3 or 4 goals now. That's the next level for me. He scored at Milan in the Champions League, so we know he can do it in this competition. But that's the next level for him if he wants to absolutely cement that position in Liverpool's team. It's weird, though, for me, because obviously, and I'm going to shock you here, Rob, I'm not as good a manager as Arne Slot. And perhaps I don't understand football as well as Arne Slot. I know, it's stunning. It's stunning to think, isn't it? But for me, if you've got a front six that Liverpool have, for me, I kind of wouldn't worry about tinkering with that. I'd just be saying, look, everything that we want you to do, you are doing. If you score, great, that's brilliant, that's lovely. But I wouldn't put another bit of sort of pressure on improvement on that. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing it very well. We'll finish Tuesday with Celtic against Leipzig. Now, Leipzig have generally been motoring. They obviously invested pretty smartly. The most important, of course, signing, if you will, was keeping hold of Benjamin Šeško over the course of the summer. Celtic Park adds something else, though, doesn't it, Rob? This is the thing. For a team like Leipzig, and I know that Leipzig, in terms of German atmospheres, is slightly different to, for example, a Dortmund. But There's a weird thing for me here where I don't think Celtic are great, but for whatever reason, whatever switch in my brain, I think Celtic might be able to get at least a draw from this game.
Well, it's going to be so interesting, Pete, to see how Celtic go about it, because obviously one so emphatically on Matchday, one beating Slovan Bratislava 5-1. Then they go and get absolutely killed at Dortmund.
Yeah.
Like absolutely meat off the bone stuff from Nuri Sahin side, 7-1 win. And then they go away in Italy and get a really pragmatic draw at Atalanta. And you're thinking, oh, that's interesting. And I wonder how valuable that Dortmund loss will be to them. Like a little reminder. Do you remember? And look, me and you are both guilty of it. And so was Didi Hamann, who I quoted on the show, was saying after the win at Bratislava, they're going to Dortmund thinking, you could have a go here. They make mistakes playing out from the back. Maybe Celtic.
Yeah.
Bring your game. No. Dortmund were runners up last year and absolutely destroyed them, as it turns out. So finding the right kind of balance for this game is going to be interesting. But I think they should have hope because Leipzig have lost all 3 games so far. They'd be in that category of teams for me that have underperformed in the new format. Admittedly, rough start. You play Atletico, you play Juventus, you play Liverpool. That's not particularly kind.
I don't know how many rougher starts.
With something.
Yeah, I don't know how many teams have had harder starts to this tournament than that.
Horrible. But should have beaten 10-man Juve, 2-1 up. Don't lose that game. They did. We're doing well at Atletico, conceding the 90th minute, and then second half against Liverpool, battered Liverpool, but couldn't get the equaliser. They're beaten by Dortmund at the weekend in that ferocious atmosphere, so they've got another one on Tuesday. But look, that'll be a cracking atmosphere, and I think Celtic fans will be like you a little bit, Hippie. A cup semi-final win over their title rivals Aberdeen, a big boost. Brendan Rodgers with his brilliant slip, if anyone saw that, doing the rounds on social media, kicking the ball back into play. Absolutely wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can get his head back in the game and come up with a plan to beat top opposition in RB Leipzig.
I love the idea that just that one slip made him completely forget all of his tactics for the next game.
What? No, it would socially rattle me for about 4 years if that happened to me on live TV.
I've known you almost 20 and I'd still be bringing it up now.
Exactly. So he needs to focus.
He does.
He does. Focus.
We need to focus as well. Rob, thank you. Don't forget to take a look at Wednesday's Champions League action as well. Again, on the Clubhouse YouTube TV channel. I keep messing this up at the end, but it's all going to go.
What was that, Pete?
Well.
You picked me up for my contagious thing.
I did. And just on that, a quick legal disclaimer: we're not again claiming that any referee is contagious.
No, I'd like to also say that I do not endorse the idea that any referee is contagious.